everyone, today we're taking a look at the Skyzone 04X goggles, the newest Skyzone's goggles. My review is probably a little later than most. I just got done doing the Cobra S goggles, and one of the main questions or comments that I got was about comparing the reception to the rapid fire module in my Orca goggles with similar or like antennas. So that's why I have different antennas on here. And it seems to me that if you're shopping for goggles, you're probably looking at three different pairs kind of in this price point. You're probably looking at the 04Xs, you're probably looking at the Eachine EV300Os, and you're probably looking at the Fat Shark HDO2s. Fat Shark HDO2s, the one big factor outside of price point, no module. So you've got to purchase that module separately, whereas the EV300Os and the Skyzone 04Xs both come with their own receiver, which does something very similar that we're seeing all the receivers do with kind of blending the signals from both channels. And we'll get to that reception here in a minute, but the first thing to note is this does not come with these antennas. It comes with these antennas. You also get a cable for your head tracker, USB-C cable for the purposes of updating firmware on the goggles if you were to need to. First, you get a plug so you can plug in a battery and you can run this thing for days. Audio video cable. It comes with two types of foam. This is traditional foam. This is more that pleather covering over the foam. Foam just sticks on. Pleather covering has Velcro that it secures it by. It also comes with two different face plates, one that's more round and one that's more flat. One of the main features you won't find on other goggles are these little rollers that we've kind of seen adopted in this hobby. They're also clicky. Of course, it's got a fan on top, which helps to keep your lenses from fogging up. It's got focal adjustment as well as IPD adjustment. The focal adjustment comes from -6 to +6, and the IPD is from 58mm to 71mm. And those focal adjustments are the same on the EV300Os, but it's different on the Fat Shark HDO2s, which should be considered. The Fat Shark HDO2s go from a +2 to a -6, and their IPD adjustment is from 54mm to 74mm. So the Skyzone goggles adjust more in and out, and the Fat Shark goggles adjust more for our IPD, for our eye set. Across the bottom, you can see our DC plug to plug in our battery lead, as well as our head tracker. We also have USB-C on there, and then we've got our HDMI port, so you can plug it into a computer, and you've got an SD card for recording your DVR, and you've got your AV cable port, as well as headphone port if you happen to have a VTX where you can listen to your motors and props whir around. If you change out the receiver that's in this one, the buttons no longer control the receiver. So that takes a big feature away from the goggles if you were to happen to change out your receiver for something else. Of course, it's got a goggle strap, and you can fit your battery inside the strap if you choose to. You can see here I've got an RDQ 3000 milliamp 2S battery. You can also get these from G&B. And you do get a case to put the goggles in. And it has this little clip that you can use to hang your goggles. In the reception footage that you're about to watch, I have set up both of these just like this. I am wearing the Orca goggles, and you can see it has a longer ready-made RC antenna, but I do have a ready-made RC antenna on this one, and then we're also using two luminaire axis antennas. Now, if you're flying at distance, you'd probably be better off using a patch antenna and pointing it the direction of either your flight or the most difficult area for your reception. Patch antenna like this one. This is from Menace RC. Haven't used it in quite a while. I fly micros. And because in my last test when I ran it at 400 milliwatts, it was requested that that is probably playing a role in why the Skyzone or the Cobra X goggles in that review was doing so well. So I lowered it to 100. I don't know why it would make a difference when you're doing testing straight across, but try to make everybody happy. So there you go. We're running at 100 milliwatt. And we're going to take off and just fly around the neighborhood. We're going to head across the street here, and we're going to just start by getting some stuff in between. If you're wanting range testing, that's going to vary quite a bit, and you're going to need to find channels where they have much more open space. Like I said, I am a micro guy, so I fly in the neighborhood, in my backyard, around the house, things of that nature. And here behind my neighbor's house and behind their bush, we've got two objects kind of between us, and we've also got the ground that's playing a role. So hopefully that gives us some data points that you can take a look. You may want to slow down the YouTube video playback in order to really diagnose the reception and the differences thereof. I am flying around a 2S with using a Eachine VTX. It's the Eachine Nano. Talked about this last time. It's the same quad as I used last time, so subscribers will, at least those that watch the video on the Cobra X goggles, will know what I'm talking about. Bop in behind my neighbor's house, straight across the street, and also behind their little brick wall where they hide their trash bins. Wish I had one of those walls at my place. And the camera is the Caddx Ant Lite. So you're fully updated running the Eachine Nano VTX. on a 100 milliwatt and the Caddx Antlight on a 2S generic sort of, cobbled together. It's not really cobbled together. It's one I fly quite a bit. It's pretty good fun. It flies forever on a 450 milliamp battery, excuse me. Now this is the neighbor's house right next door to us, so we have their house fully in view, and you can see that that's between us, and so I get up closer to the house to give you another data point. I'm going to probably say data point too many times. You're going to get annoyed by it. But just get up closer to it so you can see, with that major object and how it impacts. Many of the houses in the neighborhood do use a cement board. It was actually by a company in the 80s that went bankrupt because the cedar board is defective. Most of them have replaced it with another sort of cement board, and we've replaced it on our house as well. So if you're looking at the siding of the house, I couldn't tell you exactly what it is, but for the most part, it's going to be some sort of cement board that was manufactured or made in the 80s or 90s. Most of this area was developed in the mid-80s. Went behind the neighbor's house, kind of cattywampus to us to get a little another point where we can see the breakup. I think here in a moment, I'm eventually going to fly around the backside of our house to kind of give you that close in again. Flying around the house isn't something that I do all the time, especially because I never want to bop over the house. I usually fly in the back, so I don't want to bop over the house and then get a surprise by a delivery person. We have someone who brings us fresh eggs. We also belong to a co-op, so they bring us during the spring all sorts of vegetables. Or a delivery driver from Amazon or UPS or FedEx or DHL, or just somebody watching their dog. So usually when I fly, I stay back here, but of course I fly from back here, so I'm sitting underneath the pergola normally. But I wanted to fly around the house. That gives you another section to look at as far as the reception. I was pretty pleased at what I saw after the fact. Of course, the Orca did better, in my opinion, back there. I think that was pretty apparent. Some of the other areas that we went to might be a little bit more subject to how you see it or your opinion on the topic. But I think that's a pretty good diagnosis for relatively testing the reception with similar to like antennas. These Skyzone 04X goggles are sitting on a table next to me to alleviate the problem with the table, or to hopefully help alleviate any problem with the table. It's a plastic table, so I put it up on a cardboard box to get it up off that table and give it a little bit more of a head sort of shot. So when it comes to the fit, having these on your face, it's something that really, best case scenario is you have someone close to you that you can try them on. You can get them on your face and see how they feel. We do have those two face plates that I mentioned. We also have the two different sets of foam. We can do what we can to make it really adhere and really seal up to our eye sockets so that we don't have light leak. I think most of us at this point, having tried, multiple goggles, I think when they come in this form factor, they fit a majority of faces. A majority. Whether that's 51% or 99%, I don't know. And about the screens, the OLED screens, they're kind of the de facto for the hero line of goggles these days. We see them in all the goggles now. And how does the screen look? Well, that's something that's really hard to translate. Essentially, the blacks look more black and the whites look more white and all the colors look more colorful. I think if you go back and you look at the DVR and you compare the two DVRs, that is a little bit of a representation into the color difference. As far as how they are on your eyes, I think you could probably fly more packs longer in the goggles with a higher quality screen than you can with something you might have to try to focus on more. And in that regard, I think that if you're really in this hobby, to be in this hobby, getting a set of goggles with OLED panels in them is probably going to be a very good value. A couple years down the road, you sell them used, you buy the next goggle that you want to get at that point. So, something else to consider is OLED versus non-OLED goggles and the price trade-off that you have there. But I think they look very good. The color kind of looks better than it does with my Orca goggles. Doing a screen recording in this sort of format is really tough, and I have yet to find a good way of doing it with the equipment that I have. But what I can do instead of recording the screen for you is show you what the menuing system looks like, because I think the menuing system in these Skyzone goggles are also pretty good, but this is a recording of the Cobra X goggles. And you can see there that we've got a multicolored menu, and you use the scroll wheels, little wheels on the top, to navigate the different menus, whether you're into the screen menus or you're into the modes or what have you. You use those scroll wheels, and you can also click them in order to make your selections. Of course, you can turn the brightness and the contrast up and down. You can change all sort of settings in there. And I believe I covered it earlier in the video, but it has 3 different like receiver mode. One is third party, and that's where you plug in another module. Then the goggles will no longer control that module. So you've got to have some sort of interface that's exposed through the front of the goggles in order to control that. Then you have race mode, which essentially just means it's only going to use race band. And then you have the regular mode, which is to blend the 2 signals together and have all the channels available to you. So you might be curious about shark bite on the 04X goggles. Well, as you can see there, I've got it mounted up. Now, one thing it is to note is the cap for the fan. I didn't have screws that would match up perfectly as far as the length goes, so I had to remove the fan cap. So that's something you might take note of, is that it does mount, but you might need to use different screws. Matter of fact, the screws that come stock with it, now that I have the cap for the fan out, they are sticking out there just a touch. Not much, but just a touch. But I'm sure we can work around that. And then the gap in the front, so the mounting that comes out here is a little bit long. You can see a little bit of my skin between that crack here that we've got between the goggles. A little bit of foam tape or something there just to make sure it doesn't bobble around. And it looks really good. And the goggles can do 4:3 or 16:9, so shark bite isn't an issue there either. One other point I probably should have included in the beginning of this video is support. Support can be a big deal. And Fat Shark is pretty well known for having customer service, people who can repair goggles for us in a number of different locations. To my knowledge, after asking Skyzone, they have a service repair center, so another place that would repair goggles for us here in the US, and they've also got one in Hungary. So it doesn't seem like outside of those locations and possibly China, that if you needed to send in your goggles, you're probably going to have to send them a long way. Something to keep support is always very important. So I kind of broke down the prices for you earlier on, and I suspect it's probably going to come down to one of 2 things. Do you go for the 04Xs, which are $500, or do you save $70 and go for the EV300 Zeros? Well, the 300 O's, I said zeros, the 300 O's have a much smaller field of view, 48 degrees, whereas these have 46 degrees field of view. And they also have a lower resolution panel in them, 1024 by 768 in the EV300 O's. These are 1280 by 960. Something else to consider. It's very likely the DVR is just the same. One thing I've always enjoyed about the Skyzone DVR is that it's fairly colorful. Oftentimes in DVRs we find them kind of flat. Even with my expensive Orca goggles, the DVR is kind of flat. Orca, give us some colors in the DVR, especially for us micro guys. Do these goggles compete with Fat Shark? Sure. They're actually going to save you some money. Maybe you can save a little bit of money on these and get shark bite later on. Maybe. Or you're going to save even more and go with the EV300 O's and then maybe just have some extra batteries. It really comes down to what's best for you. What's your top priority? And this is one of the things that happens on this channel all the time, is what's best. We always want as much as we can get for a few dollars as we can spend. But it also comes down to budget. What's most important? Is it your budget? Is it the feature set? Is it brand? Brand's important to some people. So you kind of have to decide which is best for you. Is that $70 that you would save on the EV300 O's over the 04Xs? Is that more important to you? Or is having the extra field of view and screen size? Kind of up to you. If it were me, because you're going to be using these goggles probably a long time, I would go for the extra resolution. These goggles still save you money over the Fat Shark HDO2s, but you might find that there's a service difference. I don't think you will go wrong with any 3 of the goggles, but for me, because I'm kind of an older guy and I like to save a little bit of money and I trust that what I get will work, probably go for the 04Xs. But that's up to you. Tell me what you think down in the comment section below. And if you have any other comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.